So this is here from the Kuntress, by the Baal Kuntress, called Megilah Mitzvah Medivre Sofrim. Okay, and the reason why I picked this is because first of all, it's the only, I'm using the 2011 edition of the Kuntress, and I think more has been added. This was the only Megilah shiur in that, but it happens to answer a ton of questions that we raised in the beginning of our Rambam Bekius chavurah, and then also in Hilchos Megilah itself. So I thought it's a good framing Mishneh Torah Bekius type thing. Okay, so obviously this is not Bekius that we're doing, but yeah. Okay, so and the style that he does is usually it follows the pattern of like the Rav Yarsei shiur or Rabbi Chait Shavuot shiur of like raising a bunch of questions and then giving one svara and then showing how to answer everything. So we'll do the questions and then we'll like think and see like if we can like anticipate, a move or something like that, and then we'll read it. Yeah. Okay. So Megilah Mitzvah Medivre Sofrim. That's the left column. Iyun b'Kuntress Hilchos Megilah v'Chanukah. Sheyesh bichlal halachos elu shtei mitzvos aseh medivre sofrim ve'inam min minyan. So let's just look at that because I think we're not going to look at every single source inside, but I think it is good to see this inside. I'm just going to share it on my screen here. Yeah, so we're in Zmanim and the Megilah of Hanukkah. Yeah, okay, so if you check it out there, hold on, let me share the screen again. Okay, so if you check it out, so he just says Yesh bichlal and shtei mitzvos aseh midivrei sofrim v'inam min minyan, and they're not included in the number of 613. Uvir shtei mitzvos elu v'prakim elu, and the explanation of these mitzvos is in these prakim. So if you remember or can think now, what were the problems or questions we noted on that, or that can be noted on that?
It seems like there's more mitzvahs than just two.
Oh, so that's number one, right? Is that there's more mitzvahs than just two in these prakim, because you have at the very least, you have Mikra Megilah and Ner Chanukah, but then you clearly have Hallel, which you say Asher Kisham the mitzvah Tivano, and then you have the other mitzvahs of Purim. So it seems like there are more mitzvahs than just two. Okay, good. What else? Comparing it to like other.
Why are these in the Sevaros and nothing else?
Right. Why are these in the Sevaros and nothing else? Meaning what? What do you mean nothing else?
Like other things have mitzvahs midivre sofrim.
Right. There are mitzvahs midivre sofrim elsewhere, and he does not call attention to those in the Sevaros. Yeah. Yeah, so those are his first questions. Okay, so I guess we'll read the questions now, but those are the questions we raised. So he says, back to the Kuntress, V'yesh lahavin madua kolal haramam es shtei ha'inyanim ha'elu biyachad l'hifrid bein Hilchos Megilah l'Hilchos Hanukkah. Okay, so that's a different question. Okay, why does Rambam include them together and not separate between Hilchos Megilah and Hilchos Hanukkah? This is a fair question because conceptually they're completely different holidays with different mitzvos, and just because they're medivre sofrim doesn't necessarily mean that you just lump all of them together. You could say, oh, it's rabbinic holidays, but so is all of the tinios midrabanan. I mean, so yeah. All right, so that's question number one. Okay, question number two. Iyun b'hakdama l'sefer hamitzvos. So look in the intro to the Sefer Mitzvot. We're not going to do that because we did that for a month. Mishneh Torah hav'chibur al kol dinei Torah's Moshe Rabbeinu. Mitzvot Taryag. So the Mishneh Torah is a compilation of all the laws of the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, meaning to say the 613 mitzvot. Lo kasaf harambam shum mitzvah midivrei sofrim the reshimot hamitzvot shebaham damos leMishneh Torah. Therefore, the Rambam doesn't list any mitzvot midivrei sofrim in the list of mitzvot at the beginning of Mishneh Torah. Hein the Sefer mitzvos. Whether in the Sefer mitzvos, the Hein b'hakdamas haMishneh Torah gufa. So whether in the Sefer mitzvos or in the intro to the Mishneh Torah itself, right? So we're on the mitzvos in the Sefer mitzvos and the beginning of the Mishneh Torah. Ella, the kolal dine hamitzvos midivrei sofrim, the socha halachos should the Mishneh Torah. Rather, he includes the laws of the mitzvos midivrei sofrim in the halachos in the Mishneh Torah. Because the entire existence of these mitzvos is to establish and strengthen the mitzvos of Taryag, right? And that we've been through in Hilchos Mamrim, when he's explaining what the idea is of mitzvos midivrei sofrim and derabanans, and then also in the siyum minyan mitzvos, where he says that the purpose is to strengthen the Torah. Okay. Aval, now here's this question, but with this, yesh lahakshos, you can ask a kushya, Ahad dehiskir haram mitzvot Megilah v'Chanukah she'im midivri sofrim besof rishimos hamitzvot shel hakotros sheba Mishneh Torah. That's the question we just asked, which is, given the fact that he never highlights mitzvot midivri sofrim in the list, why identify them in the koteres of Hilchos Megilah v'Chanukah? Yeah. Okay. Next. If there's any other questions or points, then we'll stop and pause. Okay. Umiidach kita, and on the other hand, im amnam matimot mitzvos. Yeah.
Also, I don't know if it's not attached to the chavurah, so just why is it Megilah and Hanukkah?
Right. Yeah. Why is Megilah and Hanukkah? Right. That was another question he asked. I guess we'll have to see if he answers that one. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Umiidach kita, and on the other side, im amnam matimos mitzvos midivri sofrim b'rishimos shel hakotros. If the mitzvot midivri sofrim belong, or I think it's like literally harmonized, if they belong in the koteros of the Mishneh Torah, Mishneh Torah. I remember we counted this. If you look at all the koseros in the Mishneh Torah, you only find 3 mitzvot midivri sofrim among them. What was that? Yeah, what's the third one? Without looking ahead? Yeah, Eruvin. Good, nice. Yeah, he says Vehin, Eruvin, Megilah v'Chanukah. Okay, those are the only 3. The iyun b'Gemara, iyun b'Gemara sent Eruvin daf kaf Aleph Amud Beis, the Shlomo Tiken Eruvin and Tilas Yadayim. Okay, I think we mentioned this at the time also. Shlomo established the 2 mitzvot of Eruvin and Tilas Yadayim. So what's he going to ask?
What
What about Tilas Yadayim? Like, they're literally the same type of takana established by the same person, right? So it says, in Cain, Hemahu, the low cost of Haram, mitzvah midivri sofrim shel Tilas Yadayim, the koseres lehilchos brachos. So why doesn't he single out and list the mitzvah of Netilas Yadayim in Hilchos Brachos, which is where we talked about the halachos. Ukamochin, and similarly, yesh litmua, one can be astounded, lagabe od mitzvot midivri sofrim, regarding the other mitzvot midivri sofrim, could go in charotes. Okay, that is clearly mitzvah midivri sofrim. He to the Hilchos Mata Zayin Yud Aleph, and we're not going to look that up, but there he says charotes mitzvah midivri sofrim. Okay, lulav kochiva. Okay, taking lulav all 7 days, right? Because only day 1 is Deoraisa, and taking all 7 outside of Mikdash is Midivri Sofrim. Pidiyah to Hilchos Lulav Zayin Tezvav. Shalofu through B'Shum Koteres. They're not mentioned in any Koteres. V'odiyes Lahavin. Furthermore, Madua lo Piret Haramam B'Kosros L'Hilchos Eruvin L'Hilchos Megilah v'Chanukah es Hatzivuyin Shal HaMitzvot Yesh B'Chlal Halachos Elu K'mo Shepiret B'Shar Kol HaKotros. Why doesn't the Rambam specify in the koteros of Eruvin and Megilah v'Chanukah the commandments of the mitzvot that are included in the halachot, like he does in the other koteros? What are they asking here?
Oh, he doesn't spell out which mitzvahs they are.
He doesn't say what the mitzvah is. Meaning, if you look at every other single koteros in the Mishneh Torah, it's mitzvah likros kriya shema, mitzvah lishmo kol shofar or whatever, right? Here he doesn't say, he just says shei mitzvot midivri sofrim. He doesn't say mitzvah likros as Megillah. Why not? Okay. Wait, so let's just keep track of the questions here. So we have question 1, which was why the pairing at all of Megilah v'Chanukah. Question number 2 is why is he including them in a koseres at all if he doesn't do that for mitzvos midivri sofrim. Third is hold on just 1 second here. Yeah, why is he mentioning it all? Third is what about all the other mitzvos midivri sofrim? Fourth question is so I guess he divided that into 2. One is Shlomo was masakin Eruvin and Netilas Yadayim. So with regards to that, they seem to be the same. So why not Netilas Yadayim? And then why not any other mitzvah midivri sofrim? And then why not specify what the mitzvah is? Okay, those are the 5 questions so far. All right. Ayin Hilchos Megilah Aleph. Kriyas Megilah Havia mitzvahs midivri sofrim unekanas neviim. Right. So this we noted 2 days ago. Wait, did we have Shiur yesterday? No, we didn't, right?
No.
Yeah, 2 days ago, right? So he said it is a mitzvah midivri sofrim and tekanas neviim. Okay, so what did we ask on that?
Why is the Nevi'im part relevant?
Yeah, why is the Nevi'im part relevant? Okay, he asks because we said Nevi'im don't have the authority to establish halacha or influence halacha anyway. He asks a different question. Al inyan mitzvah midivri sofrim ayin b'seifa shel ha'hagdala Mishneh Torah, which we've done recently. Shekol mitzvah midivri sofrim nikba'a derech takana o hara o gzera. V'sheyesh l'chol mitzvah midivri sofrim pirushim v'digdukim. So he says every mitzvah midivri sofrim is either a takana, an enactment, or a hora, which is like a psak, or a gzera, which is a decree, or the iter. and that every mitzvah midivri sofrim has explanation and details. Va'inyan takana ayin b'hakdama l'pirish mishnayos b'dibra matzvil chelik hachamishi. Isaac, you recite that ball peh? So we're not going to look at that right now unless we are interested. She'ein kol takanos mitzvot midivri sofrim. So not all takanos are mitzvot midivri sofrim. In other words, they're not synonyms. There are takanos, and then there are mitzvot midivri sofrim. Okay. Ukagon, for example, takanos Ezra lachabis b'chamishi mipnei kavod Shabbos. Hilchos Shabbos lam gimel. So that's takanos Ezra. You should do laundry on the fifth on Thursdays because of kavod Shabbos. It's not mitzvah midivri sofrim lachabis b'yom chamishi. Okay. So there is a difference, even though they're both derabanan.
Yeah. Well, he hasn't explained what.
He hasn't explained what the difference is. If you look in the Rambam in, I don't know if he's going to quote this, but in, let's just look at it real quickly. Look in Mamrim, which is in Shoftim. Sefer Shoftim.
What?
First paragraph of Mamrim.
Okay.
And halacha.
14.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah, what is it?
12, 14. 12, 14.
See if I can find the phrase I was looking for here. Yeah, I think.
Oh, I did have a bookmark in it.
Oh, nice.
I didn't realize that though.
After Dishmaya, it wasn't all you. Okay, so it's halacha gimel is what we're going to be at. Okay, so echad devarim shalamdu osam mipi shmua v'him torah bal peh. The echad devarim shalamdu osam mipi datan ba'achas min Mishneh Torah nidreshes behen v'nira be'enehem shadin b'davar ze kachu. So he's talking about the different types of durbanan. So whether
this is in Bays.
it's in Bays in the real one. Or sorry, yeah, I'm using the
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
No,
it's in Bays, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's the second pair.
yeah, whether things that were learned out from Torah Bal Peh, or sorry, from tradition which are Torah Bal Peh, or whether they're things that were learned out from their own minds, the minds of Chazal, through one of the 13, through one of the miros that the Torah is expounded through, and it seemed in their eyes that the din of the matter should be such. Or whether it is something that they made as a fence for the Torah, as a need of the times, which are the decreed enactment and minhagot. That's one category, which is fence of the Torah, or maybe two categories: fence of the Torah and things that the time needs. Okay. So it's mitzvah to say to listen to them, not that all those three things are mitzvah to say. Over below sase. Anyone who violates any of them is over below sase. Then he says, so that's another thing that he says that characterizes these is things that they did to strengthen the religion and to fix the world, to repair the world. So that's the way the Rambam categorizes them here. So let's say, like in doing laundry on Thursday for Kavod Shabbos, either people were lax and they were going into Shabbos with dirty clothing, or it was something that was just designed to like elevate something that would have just been optional into something that is obligatory to make sure that it gets like that it's a iyun Kavod Shabbos. Like, I'm not sure why they did it, but either way, it's not a mitzvah midivri sofrim. It's l'sakin olam or siag.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a mitzvah would be something else.
Mitzvah is something else, which I think he'll talk about. Okay. But inyan takana, we just read that, right? Where we could go into kind of, yeah, Ezra, l'chavis b'chamish mipnei kavod Shabbos, k'disa b'chamish Shabbos lam gimel. Imzeh, with this, ha'takanot v'mitzvot midivri sofrim havyan me'otan ha'klal, where the line begins with me'otan ha'klal. Okay, so the takanot and mitzvot midivri sofrim are in this category. Oh, there you go. We just read that. As is implied in Hilchos Mamrim 1:2, im Hilchos Brachos Yud Aleph Gimel. Ella the nitosva b'mitzvah midivri sofrim chalos miyuchedes shel mitzvah. There's a separate identity or status of mitzvah in mitzvos midivri sofrim. Okay, so these are just this is just factual premises here. Okay, Vim Kain. So once the Rambam mentions that Kriyat Megillah is a mitzvah saseh midivri sofrim, yishli tmua, which would be astounded, ahad dehosif shehi takanas neviim, on the fact that he adds that it is also a takana of neviim. Shetakana havya bedrega nechusa mechalos shel mitzvah. Takana is on a lower level than the level of mitzvah. Okay, so in other words, all mitzvot are takanos, but not all takanos are mitzvahs.
Mhm.
So once you say it's a mitzvah, we assume it's a takana. So why does he have to then emphasize, oh, and by the way, guys, it's a takana?
Mm.
You know? Erevin Aleph Beis. And you can ask the same question on Erevin Aleph Beis. Let's just quickly look at that because I actually didn't look at that inside. I want to make sure that he see how he says it there. So this is Zmanim Shabbos, after Shabbos, I mean, in Erevin Aleph. You got a bookmark there?
Olive hair?
Aleph Beis.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So he says, thanks. Yeah.
That's 228.
Yeah, I think we should say the number to kind of well, that's one thing, but also to get people to be more reason in certain stages. Yeah. Aval midibri sofrim asher l'shchenim latalta b'rshus hayachid sheyesh ba haluka b'diurin ad she'aru kol hashchenim kulan me'erev Shabbos echad chatzer ve'echad mavoi ve'echad medina whatever the takanas shlomo ubeitino who. So he does not say it's a mitzvah midivri sofrim here, but he just says it's a takana of Shlomo. So I guess the Baal Kuntress is saying that once you've mentioned that it's a mitzvah midivri sofrim in the Kontress, as he does say, right? Why do you need to mention it's a takana if it's assumed that all mitzvahs midivri sofrim are takanos and takanas on a lower level? Like why mention and Shlomo made this takana? And if it weren't a mitzvah, then saying it's a takana is fine. For example, takana of Moshe Rabbeinu to do Kriyas Torah, that's not a mitzvah midivri sofrim, but it is a takana. Okay. Then he says back in the Kuntress, "V'amnam de'ba'ad kol ha-Mishneh Torah kishehuzkara mitzvah midivri sofrim lo huzkara chalotas ketakana gamkein." So all throughout the Mishneh Torah, when he mentions a mitzvah midivri sofrim, he does not mention that it's also a takana. Chutz mishnei inyanim elo, except for these two things. Okay, meaning Megilah and Erevin. Okay. And then he has a parenthetical about how lulav is also mentioned. He only mentions it's a takana because it's relevant to the fact that since it's a takana for Zecher LeMikdash, it's going to fall away when the Mikdash is back. So that's a separate thing. Okay, so this is a question now: why do you have to mention it's a takana of Nevi'im or takana if all mitzvot midivri sofrim are in this category?
Oh, so it seems like from lulav, then it seems like other things are takanas. It's just his question is why does it?
His question is, if you mention it's a mitzvah, then why do you say that's a takana?
Okay, so why is that lulav? It doesn't say it's a mitzvah.
It does. I think it might actually. Let's just look. Lulav Zion Tetvav. Race.
Oh.
Zion Tetvav.
Oh man.
Yeah. See it?
266.
Yeah.
Wow.
Those,
Oh, it's not that well, right? Okay.
Yeah.
That's different at the beginning.
Mi shakar beit hamikdash kitinu shehei lulav nitel b'chol makom kol sheves me'achag zecher lemikdash b'chol yom vayom mevarach alav asher kedushan b'ben shasav b'tzvan al tfilas lulav mipnei shehi mitzvah midivri sofrim. So he does say it's a mitzvah. V'tkana zo im kol takana shehiskin rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai mi shakar beit hamikdash u'kashi banei mikdash yachdu l'dvarim l'yoshnan. So here he says it's a mitzvah and he mentions it's a takana. But the Baal Kuntress is not including that in his kushya because he's saying it's clear that the Rambam is specifying it's a takana that will be annulled in the time of the Beis Mikdash. Whereas if you just said it's a mitzvah and left it at that, then you wouldn't assume that it would go away. Yeah. Okay, so that's the question: is if all mitzvot midivri sofrim are takanos, and it's a lower level, then it should be irrelevant to mention that it's a takana as well. You should just say it's a mitzvah.
Why couldn't in lulav it could have just said mitzvah zu instead of takana zu?
I guess so, but I guess
Wouldn't that be more apt? Like,
I hear what you're saying. I guess I don't know whether the fact that Roman Yochanan ben Zakkai was misaking it mishachar beis hamikdash, if that's like a separate category of takana that has its own identity, that there are other things in, like the stuff in the end of Hilchos Tanyos. I don't know if he did. Do we know if he did all the takanos for Zecher Mikdash? Yeah,
a lot of them.
a lot of them. Yeah. So I'm not sure. If we have time, I'd like to check out those things at the end of Hilchos Tanyos.
I don't know if it has that they would wait until the 15th to wait until the next
yeah.
day to do the Omer. To eat
yeah, that sounds familiar. I don't know if that's
Or like usher from the beginning of the day instead of from the end.
No,
Or,
it becomes much more later.
Yeah.
When you get to make this as an adult, people won't accidentally eat before they
interesting.
pass.
All right, let's go.
Yeah.
on. That's good.
Yeah, rather than say something like that.
Right.
Ayin b'koseres lehilchos erevin sheyesh bichlal halachos elu mitzvos zeh achas. Right. So we just read that in the koseres lehilchos erevin, he says there is included in these halachos one mitzvah to say. Mihu yesh bichlalan dine eruve chatzerot v'shitufe mevoos. That's one. V'gam dine eruve techumin. Shnei mine erevin elu shayacham l'shtei mitzvos nifrados. So you have the dinim of eruve chatzeros and eruve and shitufe mevoos. And then you also which allow you to carry, right, in what do you call it, Durabanan, which was Rabbim's. And then you have Erube Techumin, which is related to Tchum, extending the Tchum. Okay, he says that these two types of Erub are related to completely different mitzvahs. Tahainu mitzvah to say Shin Chaf, Shin Chaf Aleph in the number, meaning. I assume that's you can verify for me. I assume that's Isser Malacha and Isser Tchum.
Yeah, Shmuel is Malacha b'Shabbos, and then Shmuel b'Chalei Chutz b'Chum.
Right. V'imkein he'ach havian kol hilchos erevin rach mitzvos to say achas. So how can you say that there's only one mitzvah to say in erevin? It's completely different institutions.
Oh, they target two different.
They target two different derisas, and there are also two different institutions. Like, they function differently. And so why? Granted that eruv is midivre sofrim, why not say that there are two mitzvahs midivre sofrim? Because it seems like there are two different mitzvahs midivre sofrim. Yeah. With law and in general, yesh lahavin madua katam haram as hilchos eruvin. I don't know how to read this in Hebrew. Kamachlaka nifredes la'atma. Why does he the Rambam write Hilchos Eruvin as a separate division? The Halol Kula Shayach Hilchos Shabbos, isn't it all relevant to Hilchos Shabbos? So in other words, why does he make a separate category of Hilchos Eruvin at all? B'havle lemechtav dine eruve chatzeros v'shitufe mevoot v'Hilchos Shabbos etel prakim yud daled v'yud zayin v'dine eruve tchumin esel perach chav zayin. Moshe katzav dine eruve tafshilin v'Hilchos Shvisas Yom Tov. So Eruv Tafshilin is not its own section aside from Hilchos Shvisas Yom Tov. It's in Hilchos Shvisas Yom Tov because it clearly services Shvisas Yom Tov. So to here, just don't have an entire section of Sefer Zmanim of Hilchos Eruvin. Okay.
Put it in
Hilchos Shabbos, yeah. And it's not a problem to have a long halacha section because we saw some ones in where were the longer ones? Was it in? Yeah, I think it was in something in Tahara that had yeah. Okay, Amnam Shabahagam Lapir Mishnayos, Dibra Maska after Kafnis Asek Gam Vufule, Isa Behedia Eruvin Himi Inyan Shabbos. So there in the Pirish Mishnayos, he says he says explicitly Eruvin is part of Hilchos Shabbos. Okay. Let's stop here because this is where he starts to answer the questions. So anyone want to give a throw to answer all the questions? No. And I guess we have, just to take note here, we have a half an hour. And we have about the same amount to read for the next part. So anyone have any ideas for any of them? Yeah.
These three things were the Chacham creating a new institution.
Okay.
As opposed to extending a previous.
Okay. So counterpoint, Porotes. Netilas Yadayim. Say it again. No, not according to the Rambam. Yeah, because he holds it. It's just a mitzvah to have the charosis on the table, and and you dip all the mitzvah objects in charos is going to the Rambam. Yeah.
Right, but is that an extension of the mitzvah?
I don't think so. I mean, if you have a svara for that, then yeah, but I don't think it's like plain shot there. It's an extension of
We're not using no time.
Oh, we can see this iyun?
Even with my.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. So that's what I think about that.
Weird.
Yeah.
Very strange. Wait.
The answer is most of the question.
And the hint, I guess, even I mean, I would have said this even had I not read ahead, but thinking about what the Mishneh Torah is doing in terms of its categorization of everything. Like this is the Rambam is first one to write a work like this, and these are all kind of like structural questions in the Mishneh Torah, which is another reason I wanted to do this year.
I'm not like the line in the subject all of the whole shot.
Yeah.
I mean, right, but the question, the other bottoms that are like the neighbors for other instruments of the shot.
Right. I think that might be why he adds that last sentence in this paragraph, that the Rambam himself says that Eruvin is part of Inyan Shabbos.
Right. Right. There's no other missions I think one of the shot is like song and internet information.
Well,
It even is unique in that like the mission I'm thinking is just the song like one of the information.
well then,
Not something, but
right. Well, then let me ask this then. Okay, would you be bothered if the Rambam had Hilchos Kavod Oneg Shabbos? Because Kavod Oneg Shabbos, all the mitzvahs in there are derabanan. Arguably, there's like a iyun d'oraisa or whatever, but structurally, like all the chiyuvim are derabanan, and he includes that at the end of in Perik Lamed or Haftas. I always forget which one's which. I think Lamed in Hilchos Shabbos. So like, and I think we think that that's fine because it's part of Shabbos, but like
Yeah, but let's say about like authorities and they're not like structurally independent at the same people. They're not like I said, a system that has like details and minutia in it. I mean,
what about Kriyas Torah, which is in Hilchos Tefillah?
the drawing.
Yeah.
Oh,
You can't turn everything.
I'm gonna run out of derabanan at some point, right? Yeah. Okay, so we're feeling the strength of the questions.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we go on? Okay. All right. So today we're bottom right column. Today let's start as a kushus. In order to answer these difficulties, we need to understand the nature of the arrangement of the Mishneh Torah. Ayin b'sefer shel ha'hakdama l'Mishneh Torah, which we've done so many times that I'm not gonna do. Shefilu klibur zeh al kol dinei Torah Moshe Rabbeinu lefi ha'inyanim. So that the division of this compilation of all the laws of the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu is according to topic, okay, according to or context, however you want to say inyanim. No, not that translate the word inyan. Rathalam are noseim merkazim, central subjects. Dahainu yithodei Torah, Deo, Sam Torah, etc. Okay, right. That's the halacha sections. Lo, scrolling up on my PDF. Lo, lefi minyan mitzvos. It's not according to the minyan mitzvos like the sefer mitzvos. V'yesh lefarish, and so we can explain the aricha though that this arrangement shel hanotziim of subjects ena stam davar ma'uta asher hotzi harama mi libo. It's not some artificial entity that the Rambam fabricated from his heart. Okay, Ella, drumroll. Sharamam gila chaluka shiish la mitzius shel atma min haTorah gufa. The Rambam has revealed a division which has intrinsic existence in the body of Torah itself.
What?
Okay, so in other words, Rambam did not create the order; he revealed the order. Okay, that's the svara. Okay, he'll elaborate on it. Ulamar, meaning to say, the notes im elu shel yesodei haTorah, Deos tam Torah v'gulei, him hamizgaros shel haTorah shehutamu bahem kol mitzvot taryag. that these subjects of Yesodei Torah, Deos, Talmud Torah, etc., are the framework of Torah, which all of the mitzvahs of Torah fit into. The Rambam is articulating the natural categories of Torah, and that's how he's arranging the Mishneh Torah according to the natural divisions in Torah. Okay, so who cares?
Okay.
So now he's going to answer the question. Ubazeh. So with this, הקונטרס של כל נושא שיש בו מצוות תרי"ג היא קבוצת המצוות המגדירה את אותו הנושא של התורה. So the kosaros of each subject in which there are mitzvahs of tariag is the grouping of mitzvahs which define that subject of Torah. So in other words, you look at all the things that are grouped under one kosaros, that is defining the subject of Torah. So all the 51 mitzvahs in Avodah Zarah are all defining what constitutes the subject of Avodah Zarah in Torah. Okay, the two mitzvahs in Talmud Torah are defining what the subject of Talmud Torah is in the structure of Torah. Uvakan yesh lahayr, but we can point out here, de'ika arba'a nosim she'en bahem shum mitzvah. This is going to answer a question which we raised earlier in the year. There are 4 subjects in Torah that don't have any mitzvah. Okay, ela dechol echad mehem mora al mivne halachti min haTorah sheba'inan also letzorach mitzvos shebenotz im acherim. Rather, these 4 point to a halachic structure of Torah which is required for to service mitzvos in other subjects. Ukagon, for example, hanote shel zechia umatana, right? So hilchos zechia umatana. Let's just quickly look it up for a second, because I remember he has the a weird lesson for that.
Where is it?
It'd be in Sefer Kinyan, and I don't know the order in Kinyan. It's the second section in Kinyan. It would be after, I think after Hilchos Megilah. Yeah, Megilah, then Zechia Umatana. When you get it, yo, bingo. Zechia Umatana beginning.
10:46.
Oh,
Take that.
yeah, yeah. Should have been a Purim sketch.
Yeah.
You normally get like the Western music, the yeah.
How do you know it's not in there?
Oh. So he says inyan
No windows. Not even our
inyan elu hahalakos leda din zofa min hahefker heach yekne uvame yekne v'din nosin matana umakabel v'ezo matana chazeres v'ina ena chazeres uvir kol hadinin elu beprakin elu. Right, so no mitzvos.
Whoa.
Yeah, just the inyan elu hahalakos is how he says it. So what the Baal Kuntress is saying here is that this is a halakhic structure in Torah that is needed for other mitzvot, but it itself does not have mitzvos. So let's just read back in the Kuntress again. Even though there's no mitzvah, ba'inan also the mitzvah. So you do need it for the mitzvah of you shall open your hand regarding the subject of matanos haniyim. You also need it for the mitzvah. This is the weird one, right? Don't ask me what those body parts are, right? The
jaw, the maw, and the something.
Yeah, right. Well, the zroa is the flank, I think.
Yeah.
And the jaw and the maw, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is related to the subject of matanos kahuna. Ula mitzvos lo sechanim hashiachas lenosei shel avodah zarah, and the mitzvah of don't have compassion on them, which is relevant to the subject of avodah zarah. V'chein la'od kama mitzvos, and similarly for other ones. Okay, so in other words, you need the halachic structures of the Zechina Matana for other mitzvahs, but they don't have a mitzvah in them. Uvakach, and for this reason, or in this manner, hukulu arba hanosim shem hilchos kelim, Zechia umatana, shchenim, and shluchim mishutfin. L'tzorach shleimus ha'arechas. Those were the 4 sections that don't have mitzvahs. You need those 4 sections for as being necessary for the perfection of the system, of the arrangement. You need them in order to be able to enact properly the mitzvahs in other subjects. So what the Rambam is proving, what the Baal Kuntress is proving from here is the arrangement of the Mishneh Torah is not an arrangement of mitzvos. It's an arrangement of Torah subjects. Okay, and the proof of that is that there are sections without mitzvos. So it's Torah. These are natural subjects within Torah, and all the mitzvos will fit under the different subjects. But then there are also subjects that don't have mitzvos but are necessary for the mitzvos. I feel like I could come up with an analogy with the human body, but I can't come up with it. You know, like there are, you know, bodily organs that, I mean, everything is interrelated, right? There are bodily organs though that are that have certain functions, but then I bet like there's something that you could say is like is not itself an organ, but you know, like let's say like I don't know if it's a good analogy here, but let's say like oxygen is part of the body system, but it's not a part of the body. It's not a structure within the body, but it's needed for the entire body to function. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not, but that's like the thing that he's trying to do is that you've got the parts of the system in terms of the part of Taryag, but then you've got the phenomena that are needed for the entire thing to run, you know? Okay, so now let's see how he answers the question. So according to this entire svara, we can say, it's impossible to have a mitzvah without there being a subject into which it can be found, in which it could be found. So no mitzvah doesn't have a home, even if you have to cram it in the home like Avel, right? Yeah. And just like for mitzvahs of Taryag, so too for the mitzvahs of Medivri Sofrim. The whole the tikkun rabbanan ain't doraisa tikkun, because everything that the rabbanan enacted, they enacted like the doraisa, meaning modeled after it. And that's why they are part of the arrangement. However, regarding the majority of mitzvahs Medivri Sofrim, you'll find each of them in the Torah subject that it is related to. Meaning, you'll find Netilas Yadayim in Hilchos Brachos, because that's where it belongs, or Kriyas Torah in the Sibor part of Hilchos Tefillah. You know, they all belong nicely in their place. Okay. Ulam Lagabe Gimel Chiyuvim, but regarding 3 Chiyuvim, Ratzu HaChachamim Lekavam Kemitzvos, Aval Lo Hayu Lechiyuvim Elu Shum Note HaKavua Kvar Min Torah Shahaya Matim Lahem. So the Chachamim wanted to establish them as mitzvos, but there was no pre-existing subject of Torah which would fit them. And the Chachamim cannot establish a subject on their own. Ella, here we go. You need someone who has prophecy to authorize the addition of a subject. And even with this, you cannot authorize this authorization will not be possible unless it is attached to a pre-existing category of Torah. Lakaf, for this reason, and we're going to have to like make sure we understand this after I finish reading it. Lakaf kasav Rambam legabe eruvin and Megilah benosaf l'masha kasav dehavi mitzvos midivri sofrim shekavu neviim. So that's why the Rambam writes, in addition to saying that they're mitzvos midivri sofrim, that they were established by neviim. Ratalomar shah neviim ishru es hanosim shabahem yuchlu mitzvos elu limate. That the neviim or authorized the subjects in which these mitzvos can be found. Once the subject was established for Megilah, then the Chachamim were able to come along and establish Hanukkah within that subject. And that's why the Rambam includes Hanukkah in Megilah. All right, so let's just try to understand what he's saying here. Yeah. It's a svara, right? I mean, it's not a fact, right? So what is he saying here? So he's saying, so the part that's easiest to understand is, let's pretend that that mitzvahs midivri sofrim didn't exist, which at one time they didn't, right? So if you looked at Torah, you would see natural categories, natural subjects that are in the entity of Torah itself, and all Taryag could be classed under those. So now the Rabbanan come along and create mitzvahs from Divrei Sofrim. Most of those mitzvahs will be able to find a home. So lulav kol shiva clearly belongs to Hilchos Shofar Sukkah Lulav, right? Tainios, midar Rabbanan clearly belong in Hilchos Tainios of Zalka Ve'Tzara. But What are you going to do with Megillah? Megillah does not belong in any pre-existing Torah category. And the Chachamim, and this is the part that I'm not sure I understand, he's saying the Chachamim can't just make up a category. Rather, they need it authorized by Nevi'im. Now, why would that be? I think we can maybe elaborate on this a little bit.
Well, that's hard because, I mean, what does that do with the Bashmai?
Right.
Like,
Well,
means-
that's it. Because a little bit, yeah.
Well, my understanding is that the
Yeah.
Nevi'im can't tamper with the system at all.
Right. But the thing is I think if I press you on saying what do you mean, you'll say halachically they can't tamper with it.
Yeah.
Right. They can't influence halacha.
Right.
So it sounds this is not nothing. Them identifying a Hilchos Megilah doesn't actually change. There's no nafkamina halacha.
Mm. Mm.
Sounds like what he's saying to
Okay.
me. Yeah.
Well, there is, because then it leads to you being able to be Misaki and
No, because it sounds well. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, meaning they could. Yeah, they could have just done it as a takana. Is that what you're saying? That they didn't need to do it. Yeah, like Harosis and like all the other takanos.
So why did they do this then? Why they need this then?
Why they need this in order for the Rambam to write the Mishneh Torah. No, so I'm not sure. I guess I'm guessing, and this is just me speculating about what the Baal Kuntress would say, is that let me think for 1 second. It sounds like he says that it comes from kol detakon rabbanon ke'in d'oraisa, or kol detikon rabbanon ke'in d'oraisa tikon.
Mhm.
And since every d'oraisa, mitzvah d'oraisa has its home, and since Megillah did not naturally have a home, then it would need to be part of the character of the mitzvah in order to do it. Now your question is still good of like, sounds like he's saying that they couldn't have made the mitzvah if they didn't give it a home, and therefore when the Nevi'im authorize it, then it sounds like they're interfering in halacha. But here's what my understanding of this is. It's not based on what he's writing. This is just like me trying to understand it. I mean, he doesn't say this. Is that like it's like wolves? It's like you have man.
I'm serious.
I'm serious. I mean, I didn't have to say it this way, but you know what's the problem with man projecting his own categories onto the natural world,
Mhm.
and you never know whether you're actually discovering something that really exists or whether you're just projecting your own category. So in order to authorize it, meaning to make sure that they are in line with the truth,
Uh-huh.
then they needed the Nevi'im. So the Nevi'im are just revealing that yes, Megillah is a separate institution in its nature,
Right.
not something that could be subsumed into the other ones.
Right.
You know, so they're not encroaching upon the halakha, they're revealing just something about the nature of the institution.
So they're right. It's almost like they're just saying fact.
Yeah,
Kinda
it's almost like the same fact. It's like asking a Navi, you're allowed to ask a Navi where a lost object is,
Right.
even though that helps you fulfill the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda. I mean, that's a really bad example, right? But like, we won't consider that interfering. It's the revealing a fact, which allows the mitzvah to be performed. That's a very loose analogy, right?
So this is like peer review, except not a peer.
Yes. Peer review that is lo b'shamayim, but also min from the Gula. Yeah, also min hashamayim. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What?
That is the best peer there is.
Yes.
Wait, hold on. I guess
That's behalf of Recha Kamoka Drasha, right? Recha Zu Hakadosh Baruch Hu.
Good.
I think that's in the that's Rashi gives two interpretations of why Recha Kamoka is Klav Gadol Torah. I think the first interpretation he gives is that Re'acha is Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and all the mitzvahs are included in that. And then the second interpretation is what people think of like Bein Am Zover is very important, you know? Yeah.
It's weird. Like I guess like there's slightly a difference between a Navi, like a Navi revealing fact. That's just like something that's true, like not in the halachic system. But,
Yeah.
like, it seems like, let's say like I don't know, like saying a halacha, like you could kind of say they're saying fact because like they're telling us what the halacha is. But that's so then like how is that?
Okay, that's a good question. I want to think about that question more, but I thought of another example when you were saying is like, let's say for example, God revealing to Moshe Rabbeinu the Seder of Yugam Umilos Harachamim.
Mhm.
You know, that's Moshe Rabbeinu, obviously, who was a different kind of Navi, but like that is a revealing to him a reality in the Hashgacha.
Mhm.
And then Moshe Rabbeinu is presumably like as a chacham being makadesh the tefillah, you know, something like that. I want to think about it some more though, because it's a good question, right? Like in other words, like let's say you had a navi who like the shogig is over on the issue of telling you like how to paskin, and then you're like, whoa, navi, don't do that. He's like, okay, wait a minute, takes off his navi hat, puts on his chacham hat, and then winks and then says the exact same thing, you know, like that's your question, right? It's like, you know, is at the end of the day, he's giving his input,
Right.
and he is a navi,
Yeah.
but it's a fact. So like mimanavshaf, if he's just giving a fact, then giving a fact as a navi is not even a thing. It's just giving a fact, and
I think
that's really for your shiur also, I think.
I think
That's Ram deals with in the beginning of the Pirush Mishnayos, and
I think the thing specifically is them is about them saying this is what the ultimate halacha is. Like saying like with like authority, this is how the
talk in this way, right? Yeah.
As opposed to providing input for like for like the discussion.
Yeah, I hear. Yeah.
So right, they're not telling you what to do or how to.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not like the Nevi'im aren't coming in and saying by the authority of Hashem that we're setting up mitzvah and going.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Let's go on. Just make sure we finish this year. Now this next one is the one that is this next paragraph is the one that is the weakest in my understanding. Okay. This is where he addresses the Eruvin question about why there are two mitzvahs of Eruvin that are all lumped under mitzvahs to say mitzvahs midivir sofrim achas.
Right. Wait. So that's the end of the Megilah Hanukkah answer? Like he's.
That's the end of that part. I think he's going to go back to it in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. Uvebir ha delo hayu l'chiyuvim elu shum nosei hakavua kvar min Torah shayim natim lahem. And regarding the explanation that these chiyuvim don't have any pre-existing Torah category which they would be in line with, yesh lafarish etzem hagdarat eruvin hu kvius tzad shvisa al yidei mahal. So that's what the subject of eruvin is establishing an aspect of shvisa through food. Okay, that's the subject. Kvius zo ika shtei totav. For that kvius, there are two outcomes, okay, or two manifestations. Achas hamiyufesas le'isr hotza'a, the achas hamiyufesas le'isr tchum. One manifestation in the prohibition against carrying from domain to domain, the other in the prohibition against in the prohibition of tchum. But the mitzvah midivir sofrim is one mitzvah. Note the subject, the efshar likboat tzad shvisa al yedei machal, namely that you can establish an aspect of shvisa through food. Havi b'nosaf l'nosei shel hashvisa atzma shel Torah is super added to the subject of shvisa itself from the Torah. L'kach isher navi es hanosei hanosaf b'tzirif l'nosei hakavua kvar min Torah d'hainu Hilchos Shabbos, and therefore the navi authorized this super added subject in conjunction with the pre-established category from the Torah, namely Hilchos Shabbos. So in other words, this is a good example, is that if you were just left to your own device as a chacham, you would be in doubt, is this part of the subject of Hilchos Shabbos, of a subject of Shabbos, or is this a super added subject onto Shabbos? And you need a navi to like make that judgment call. Okay, the parentheses.
Wait, and there wouldn't be enough except how you write the Mishneh Torah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, naphmi is also how you comprehend the truth. But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. And by the way, he just parenthetically says that Shlomo was a navi according to the Rambam, and you can look at these sources to find that because Shlomo was one who he doesn't say Eruvin was established with Nevi'im,
Right.
so you have to say that Shlomo was the one who authorized it when he made this.
Got it.
Gemara
Yeah.
also says this one wasn't it?
Was it?
So the Gemara also says this one.
Yeah, but it's not clear.
I thought.
Yeah, it's not clear whether he's a navi or he got nevuah or like what the situation is because none of his books are in the Nevi'im.
I thought the Rambam held it wasn't enough. I guess
You can look at these sources. Yeah. Okay. V'chein l'gavi Megilah B'Chanukah she'etzem hagdarasan hu kvius moed. Here's what I think what you were looking for, even though you didn't ask the question when you asked if he's done yet. Same thing regarding Megillah and Chanukah. She'etzem hagdarasan, their essential definition hu kvius moed l'pirsume nisa. That's the subject, is establishing a holiday for publicizing the miracle. The ein tzarich lamer denosei zeh havi benosaf l'nosim shel Torah. Obviously, this is a super added subject to the subjects of Torah. L'kach, and therefore, ishu nevi'im es hanosei hanosaf b'tzirif l'nosei hakavua kvar min Torah d'hainu hilchos tainos. Therefore, the nevi'im authorize the addition of this onto the subjects of the Torah, which is hilchos tainos. When he's, I should clarify this point. he's not just saying that the Nevi'im authorized that this is a different subject. He's saying that they authorized that it should be appended to a pre-existing Torah subject. So Eruvin is an addition to Shabbos, and Megillah and Hanukkah is an addition to Tinios. Okay, and he's going to say, and this is the annoying thing about the Kuntress, he says, "Ukein had pirashn of inyan Purim kiyom mishteh v'simcha." So he refers us to another one of his own shiurim, which is not written yet, or was not written in 2011 in this edition. Okay, so you have to see there. Mishneh Torah or what it says in the end of the Rishimos Mitzvot. What I would say though is if you look at the end of Hilchos Megilah v'Chanukah, or sorry, the end of Hilchos Megilah, he says it in terms of tsaros. He says that even though all the zichron of all the tsaros will be nullified, this one won't, which implies and the zichron of the tsaros that are nullified are the tinios at the end of Hilchos Tinios. Right. So it is an extension of that. And it was an eighth Sarah. Megillah was an eighth Sarah, and Hanukkah was an eighth Sarah that, like, we responded with. Okay, last couple paragraphs here. Imze, we're on the next page, right?
Yeah.
With this idea that the Nevi'im authorized subjects to establish in them mitzvos midivri sofrim, move on ha dehishir harama mitzvos elu midivri sofrim b'kotro shel hanosein. Now it makes sense why the Rambam identified these mitzvos midivri sofrim in their kotros. Uklomar, meaning to say, Shemikivin shakoseres shall kol nose sheish bo mitzvah mitzvos ki kvuta hamitzvos hamagdira as oto nose. Given that the kotros of every subject contains the mitzvos which comprise that subject and define it, lakach lekashu mitzvah midivri sofrim b'kotros shall kol hanotim shebehen min haTorah. Therefore, there is no mitzvah midivri sofrim in the kotros that are of the subject of Torah. Meaning, if the Rambam, let's say, put Netilas Yadayim in Hilchos Brachos in the Koseres, it would imply that Netilas Yadayim is part of what defines the subject from the Torah. But no, the only one that defines the subject in Hilchos Brachos is Birkat HaMazon. Okay, and all the other mitzvos in Hilchos Brachos fit into that.
Right, they're all Durabanans.
And they're all Durabanans, right? But by Megillah and Hanukkah, those are the ones that define the Torah subject. So that's explaining how you can have a non-uniformity in, does the Rambam mention the mitzvos midivri sofrim in the Koseres or not? The answer is, what he puts in the Koseres is that those mitzvos which define the Torah subject. So in cases where there's even one deoraisa, that's the thing that defines the Torah subject. But when there are no mitzvos deoraisa, then it's the rabbanan that define the subject. And when there are no mitzvos, it's the inyan that defines the subject. Yeah. All the subjects of Torah, every subject of Torah is defined specifically by the Torah mitzvos in it. The only mitzvos midivri sofrim are only like accompaniments to them, accoutrements. Oh, nice. Their entire existence is to establish and strengthen the mitzvot of the Torah that are in it. Like that was a phrase borrowed from Mamrim that we read just now. Ulam b'notei hanosaf le'otam shel Torah, but in the superadded subjects to those of Torah, kol hagdaraso hi aidei hamitzvos midivri sofrim shebo. The entire definition is through the mitzvos midivri sofrim that are in it. And that's why the Rambam needed to mention them in the kotros of these two superadded subjects, namely Eruvin and Megillah Hanukkah. And nevertheless, the Rambam did not specify in the kotros of these the tzivuyin of these mitzvos. That's an interesting answer. Why didn't the Rambam say say, one is literal says Megillah? Why didn't he specify it? In order to indicate that these mitzvos don't have their own intrinsic existence. Their existence only comes because of the fact that they strengthen the Torah. So in other words, mitzvos of Taryag have their own intrinsic existence and they define the subject. The mitzvos midivri sofrim of Megillah and Hanukkah define the subject, but they don't have their own intrinsic existence. And in order to show that, the Rambam doesn't talk about them the same way that he talks about the mitzvos deoraisa.
Right, that's like Netilas Yadayim.
That's on Netilas Yadayim, right?
Okay.
Well, it's all mitzvos midivri sofrim, even Megillah and Hanukkah. They don't have their own intrinsic existence.
Right, but they do define the subject.
They do define the subject, right? Yeah, there's a Netilas Yadayim is different.
Got it.
Yeah, okay. How many paragraphs? Two more?
Yeah.
All right. Ve'achar kol zeh yesh lahosif t'kmo sheyesh metzius shel ha'atzma lenotim min Torah. And after this, we should add that just as there is an essential existence to the subjects of Torah, kach yesh metzius nami l'klali hanosim. There's also an existence to the general categories of subjects. Okay, we got to show the Baal Kuntress that article I mentioned, because look what he's about to say. Ratzalomar yud dalet haklalim shel hamada ahava zmanim v'chulei. So those 14 have their own existence in Torah. Don't tell them that, right, was it Nezikin and Kinyan used to be, or Kinyan used to be one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing I was mentioning that they found like the
Right.
Cairo visa for the earlier draft. Yeah. V'chol zeh mishum she'Torah havia ma'arechas shel nosim ha'meshubatzim zeh im zeh. I forgot to look at what the word meshubat means. All of this is because the Torah is an arrangement of subjects that's meshubat with itself. I would say interwoven if I had to guess. Leos ichud shalom, to make one unity, a complete unity, l'tachlis yidiyat Hashem, for the purpose of yidiyat Hashem, ukidipirashim b'inyan mitzvot anochi Hashem. As I explained in the shiur in mitzvot anochi Hashem, which I wanted to do earlier in the year, but we just never got around to it, so maybe we could do it sometime. Yeah, so he's saying that the 14 Sofrim have their own existence, and then we had a side note here that the Rambam didn't come up with that plan originally in the Sefer Mitzvos. He came up with that plan apparently later, because in the Sefer Mitzvos, he just said he's going to arrange it by topic, not by the 14 books.
And the Rambam didn't get this from a Torah.
No, these are his own. He didn't have to Navi either. Yeah. Mihu, however, im hamivna shel sidur hamitzvot the Mishneh Torah hu al pi hatachlis b'yidiyat Hashem. If the structure of the arrangement of the ordering of the mitzvahs in the Mishneh Torah is based on the purpose of knowledge of God, nami havi hamivna b'sefer mitzvos al pi tachlis zo. And if the order of the Sefer Mitzvos is according to this, why is the order of the mitzvahs different in the Mishneh Torah and the Sefer Mitzvos? He's going to answer that now. Okay. The Mishneh Torah mitzudaros hamitzvos al pi ma'arechas haklalim hanosiim shalahen. So we can say that the Mishneh Torah, the mitzvahs are arranged based on the general arrangement of subjects, of their subjects. The ilu b'sefer mitzvos, ready for it? Misudaros hamitzvos al pi yachas hagavra lahen ba'oven ma'asi. It is ordered based on the practical relationship of the gavra to them. Ukidamashma mishaylos utshuvas harambam simin taf mem zayin b'sefa. So I looked that up, and in the Shaylos and Shuvas, the Rambam is explaining why he ordered certain mitzvos, and he says it's practical. He doesn't say this as universal, but he says it's about certain mitzvos. So the Baal Kuntress is saying that that's the case in general. And we kind of saw that when we said it's associative, that it does go in like, all the mitzvos that practically go together, not thematically, right? As like the Mishneh Torah. V'chein mashma mehad chol chalukas hamitzvos al pi mitzvot mitzvot lo tatei b'klal havia b'yachas l'gavra, right? That division itself of asay and lo asay is in relation to the person. Ukidamashma mehad isa b'hagdamas l'sefer mitzvos ki ma shemitzvot tatei k'minyan ha'evarim. Oh, he's also tying it to the mnemonic. That the mitzvah to say is like the limbs, the number of limbs, 248. Klomar shekol aver omer lo la'adam asay bi mitzvah. Right, the Rambam says each and every limb says do a mitzvah with me. Mitzvah lo says a community mos hashana klomar kol yom vayom omer lo la'adam al ta'at bi avera. Each and every day saying don't do an avera on me. So he's saying from the Rambam's mnemonics that both reference man doing the mitzvahs, that the ordering in the Sefer Mitzvahs is practical in relation to the Gavra. Yeah. Yeah, so I think this does give us what to think about in terms of those questions which we had earlier in the year.
Crazy.
Yeah. All righty, let's stop here. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.